With the much anticipated release of LEGO D&D Collectable Minifigures, I thought it only appropriate to pick one up and make something inspired by it. Let's see who we get here. Looks like we got the Aarakocra Ranger. So today, let's scale him up and build an Honorable Aarakocra Ranger. Let's start things off by scaling up his head. For our eagle-like beak, I have this bionicle claw part in yellow, which has the perfect shape. I think pairing it up with this fur part will lead us in the right direction. We just need to figure out how to attach them together. For that, let's add a Technic connector, and then clip in some rounded plates, which we can attach 2 bars into. Into the bar, I'll clip this robot arm, which the fur can attach into. Now, we can swing that around and into place. He's starting to take shape already. For a neck connection, I'll use some lift arms and then connect in a ball joint. I find the eyes are often one of the most important parts of a LEGO character, and eagle eyes have a really distinct look. To recapture that here, I'll add a hollow stud to some robot hands. That can hold a ninja scarf, which I'll lock in place using a gold hollow stud. Then, I need another ninja scarf. This time in black, which I'll steal from this guy. I'll clip that around the gold stud to finish off the eye. However, he has a really wide-eyed look without an eyebrow. To build the brow, let's use a large spike and a skeleton arm. This can clip into the side of one of the robot hands to add the brow in a nice compact assembly. With that, I think we're ready to clip the eye into the head. Next thing we need to add is a lower jaw for this beak. Here, let's use a yellow bullrock eye part. To that, I'll add a robot hand and a gold rod. After, we'll need a hand or two from Marge here. Those can clip in here to round out the beak. Then, on one side, I'll attach a robot arm. Back on the head, I'll create a connection point for the lower jaw with this rod. Let's clip the jaw together, and then secure the other side with one more robot arm. Now his face is looking a little skinny currently, so let's build this area up. Since I have no more connection points there, I came up with a plan of using some minifigure flippers, which are a little flexible and can sandwich around the beak. Here, I'll clip some skelly arms and small spikes. Let's see what's going on inside of that head of his, and attach in this assembly like he's an Olympic swimmer with a pair of furry nose plugs. I think that does a good job of bulking up his head without making him look like a seagull. When I was looking for inspiration for how to build this Aarakocra Ranger, I came across a lot of amazing artwork, including the official artwork from the D&D manual, which would honestly make for a pretty awesome poster. Luckily for us, Displate, the sponsor of today's video, has unique metal posters designed to capture all your passions. That includes this awesome Aarakocra poster, hundreds more D&D posters, and over 2 million other artworks from the likes of Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, and much more. Mine have been such a great addition to my LEGO studio. Mounting your Displate is tool-free, safe for your walls, and super quick. And the best part is that because your poster is held on magnetically, you can swap your Displates anytime you want to. I picked up some of their awesome brand new texture posters, which push the boundaries of what a poster can be, with their tactile textures, selective matte and gloss finishes, and 3D contours. Receiving my Displates was honestly like Christmas came early. They only take 4 to 5 business days to arrive, after being custom printed across the pond in the EU. Displate is currently celebrating Collectors Fest. It's an event where you can find new time-limited artworks from different brands and artists. This also means higher discounts. Use the link in my description or code MitchBuilds to get 32% off 1 or 2 Displates, and 37% off 3 or more Displates. This offer is limited, so make sure to act fast and spice up your room with awesome metal posters from Displate. To round out the head, I want to add in some more fur. But first, I need to connect this minifigure neck bracket. That'll require some eye surgery first. For the fur, let's add some rounded plates to this fur part. Then, a snot brick can let us connect it into the bracket. To fill in the sides of his head, I'll again use some fur bits, with a rounded plate and then some slopes and tiles. Let's clip that in to finish off the head. Up next, let's construct the torso. For the main structure of it, I want to keep things simple and use this Ben 10 torso part. I'm wanting to give our ranger here a long neck, so let's build that with some Hero Factory and this fur part. Then, I'll connect this socket with a rod. There, I'll clip in a rounded plate, This armor piece should be good for the back of our neck. Let's attach it in with a plate. Now we can clip that into the torso. Up next, I want to get some wing connection points sorted out. Let's use a pair of stopper axles here, which I'll add some Technic connectors and half pins to, before adding some ball joints for the wings. Now, I'd like to continue by adding some leather armor to his neck, in the form of these jaw parts. To give them something to connect to, I'll add some pin axles to this cam, and then we can attach some connectors. This assembly's probably a little overkill at this point, but I'll add some lift arms, and then a pair of robot hands, for the jaws to connect into. Before that, let's tile off these studs. With the assembly done, let's attach it into the torso and swing the jaws into place. The next bit I want to attach is this Hero Factory shell. To facilitate that, I'll add in this ball joint. The minifigure's torso has a green scarf with a gold pin, which I really want to translate over into our model. I have these Boba Fett capes, which should work perfectly. For the pin, I'm going to use this gold ring and a sword part. Let's shove some cape through the ring. Then the sword can slide through the loop we just created. To hold this in place, I'll use a ball joint and then add a socket to lock it in. Let's use some bionicle armor for the shoulders. I'll use a half pin to attach it in. The next thing we need to add is some belts. I'll use some zipline parts for that. I think we can double up 2 of them here to get the look I'm going for. Let's use some T-bars to connect them in. To add a buckle to the belt here, I have this bionicle chain link, which we can clip into the zipline. I'd also like to continue the green cloak down, so to do that, we can add another Boba Fett cape. With that now installed, I'd like to add another belt to match the minifigure. I'll clip in another buckle. Then, wrap the zipline around the torso a few times to get a convincing belt. Another accessory here that we can add is a pouch in the form of this backpack. In my mind, this is where our ranger stores some seeds for snacks along the road. I'll add a spot for it to attach by using some rods and a droid arm. Now, all that's left for the torso is to add some stuff to cover his back. To attach this large shell, I'll construct a little assembly with some T-bars and droid arms to let me position the shell. I'll attach that into the back and then connect in the shell. For the next section, I'll use another of these jaw parts, which I'll tile off. I'll make a connection point for it with a rod and a rounded plate. Then, I'll build up some connections by adding in a clip plate. There, I'll connect in a bar plate and a slope. Finally, for some coattails, I'll use these robot arms and some flag parts. Before attaching that in, let's add one more Boba Fett cape and secure it in place with a round plate and then our previous assembly. That completes the torso construction, and we can move on to building up some legs to go along with it. Here, let's start off with a double socket and add some friction extenders to it. Then, I'll add some Technic to attach a ball joint here. For feathery details, let's add in a bullrock eye and a pair of shells. I'll cap it off with a fur add-on. For the sides of the legs, I want to incorporate these wing parts to give it an even more feathery look. A skeleton arm and a T-bar can allow for that to move in place. To continue his armor down into the legs, I have these large Star Wars torsos we can use. They have only a single connection point, so we'll have to find a way of attaching that to the upper leg. A bone, ball beam, and pin axle should do the trick. Let's add that in to complete the upper legs. To build some digigrade knees, I'm going to use this tried and true cam double joint assembly. I'm using standard lift arms in the middle, because cams would collide with the friction extenders we used before. With that completed, we can begin on the lower legs. Let's start off with a socket and a long axle. Then I'll add some Technic to attach this shell. And after, we can thread on this yellow tube for some skinny bird leg. I'll use a ball joint for the ankle and attach a large spike to the back of the legs. For some fur, I'll attach a clip to this part and then connect it into the leg with a T-bar. Then a few more details come round with the lower legs, and it's time for some talons. I want to again use the same claw part we already used for his beak, here for the talons. Let's add a lift arm, a robot hand, and some yellow bushings to it. Then we can connect 3 of those talons into a large foot part. I'll add a rubber lift arm to the underside to make sure it's nice and sturdy. Now it's time to connect the leg together. Let's add in the knee joint, then the lower leg. Next, I'll give him one of those stylish bird anklets before attaching in the talons we just built up. That wraps up his legs, and it's time to build one of the trickiest things I've ever built, his bird wings. After a number of iterations, here's what I ended up with. Let's start with the Hero Factory bone and add in a friction extender. Then, we can attach in a rod which will serve as an anchor point for this pair of lift arms. I'll add a couple of pin axles here so that we can attach some of these ratcheting joints. Let's go ahead and build up a spot for one more joint. To those ratcheting joints, we can connect these wing parts, which should be perfect as feathers. For the next layer of feathers, I have some other wing parts we can use. To connect them, we can add 3 Among Us plates to this tile. Then we can clip in the wings. Let's attach that in to complete the drumstick. Next, for the wing tips, I want to use a slightly larger wing part, which has a similar look to the ratcheting ones we used earlier. I'll add 3 of them to this wrist joint. Onto the top feather, we can add a clip to hold a second layer of feathers. And to cap off the top, I'll add another fur bit. Now for the flats, let's build up some feathers with a ratcheting joint, a bar, and some rod ends, with this new bar plate to cap it off. I'll add some half pins to the bone for the feathers to attach into. Let's lock a third in place with a plate. Then add some slopes to the top of that. To connect in one more feather, I'll use a robot arm with a slightly longer feather assembly. For feather layer 2, I'll attach a robot arm and hand here, and then clip that into the wing. Let's go ahead and add in some more feathers, because I think we've been slacking up to this point. Now we can connect all 3 wing sections together to complete the wings. For his weapon, it's time to build up a bow and arrow. Let's start with an arrow. This fun part is perfect for the fletching. I'll connect a rod end to that, and then build the arrow up with some rods and staff hilts. And for the arrow head, let's use this spike. Now, starting in on the bow, let's use some axle connectors for the grip. I'll add some triaxles and connectors. Into those connectors, I'll attach some dino tails for the limbs. I have another zip line to use for the bowstring. I'll attach that with some LEGO elastic bands. The bow's coming together, and we just need to add a few finishing touches. starting with a neck bracket so he can hold it. Then, I'll construct a little assembly which we can use to hold the arrows we just built. That completes the bow, and we just have our last set of limbs to build, the arms. I'll construct them around a socket, which can attach into some Technic bricks. Then, we can add a plate and an armor part. Let's cap it off with some fur and tiles. For the elbow, I'll employ a stopper axle with a ball joint and a bushing. I'll keep the lower arms nice and simple, and use a double socket with a red shell and 2 sizes of ball joints. We can build the hands around this socket and some Among Us plates. Let's add in some robot arms and claws. Let's finish off the back of his hand with a slope and a tile. I'll add a boat stud for his palm. Now we can connect the arm together. With that, it's time for the final assembly. I'll first clip in his head. Then, let's add those arms. After, I'll attach his legs. The wings can clip into his back, and we can finish it off by adding his bow. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring this video, and it's time for the beauty shots. Thanks to all the amazing people supporting me over on Patreon. You are the building blocks that make this channel possible. And a special shout out to my newest patrons, Vortex Nail and Curtis Viden.